Okay, so part of this presentation will not be on the recording, but it's just the beginning and it's only on the first slide, so alhamdulillah. So let me say that again, and thank you again for your patience. If you are fasting with the right conditions, you're going to be burning away that tendency to get into those excitatory, frustrating, anxious states of dis-ease, chaos, anger, and rage. Because remember, just sort of keeping this in mind, this principle that if you get angry, you will lose your fast. So that if someone provokes you, what you're supposed to say to them is, I am fasting, I am fasting, I am fasting. In a very gentle way, by the way, because you do not want your ego or your excitatory states in your naps to be activated. So what we notice and what I'm saying here is that this is an internal, it is an interdimensional thing that's happening with the soul. It's not altogether a physical act. It's a consciousness inside of yourself. So the internal lower base passions and appetite burn inside of us. So you'll know that we often say that person is getting under my skin. When I am fasting, then we burn away letting people get under our skin, and we let Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala get under our skin, to get under our skin, under our chest, into our heart. Now, in Arabic, sometimes one word has two opposite meanings, depending upon the context. Ramad also means a special rain that comes from the environment of the Arabian desert when it falls in the fall season. And that rain is usually a gentle rain. And that rain actually reminds me of the summer rains of Florida. It'll be very hot. It'll feel like it's 112 heat index. And that beautiful rain comes, and then it cools everything down, and we can have a nice walk afterwards. But perhaps even more important than what we're addressing today is recognizing that the rain that Allah sends upon the earth in the month of Ramadan, the rain, the real rain that we see when we look outside our window, cleanses and washes the earth's surface of dirt and dust and test the allergens that excite our senses, our sinuses. So think of it as Ramadan comes as a special rain from Allah with all these blessings. And that when this blessing comes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is washing away your soul, the dirt on your soul. Alhamdulillah. And so there's something about rain that makes the Arabs very happy. Remember, this would be the hottest time of the year at the time that Ramadan was named this and sort of implemented as a practice. Rain during the summer is an added bonus for the year. The raindrops bring with them a sign. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cools the heated ground by the coolness of the droplets, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy pours. When Allah wets the dry earth by the rain, Allah's mercy pours. So the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rains upon us, and that is an invisible, unseen, priceless rain. If somebody were to tell us that it's raining dollar bills, we'd all run out into the street to catch some of the dollar bills, particularly perhaps now in COVID-19. But something is going on this month. And in the month of Ramadan, there's a rain of blessings that you don't want to miss. You want to run everywhere toward Allah to get whatever Allah is raining down in this beautiful month that is coming upon us. The Messenger of Allah, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, Ramadan has come to you. It is a month of blessing. in which Allah covers you with blessing. For he sends down mercy, decreases sins, and answers prayers. In it, Allah looks at your completion in good deeds and boasts about you to his angels. So show Allah goodness from yourselves, for the unfortunate one is he or she who is deprived in this month of the mercy of Allah, the mighty, the exalted. And this is from an authentic hadith narrated by Tabarani. So if you remember, Sha'aban brings the rain for the seeds that we planted in Rajab, and Allah will rain on us whatever we sowed in Rajab. He will rain on us in these final days, today, Monday, and Tuesday. And then he will rain on us for 29 or 30 days in the month of Ramadan. So the water of iftar will rain out our thirst. What a mercy from Allah. So that we only fast from dawn until sunset. There are other practitioners of fasting who actually fast all the time, but they only drink water. But we have this special blessing. And when we taste the water of iftar, now some cultures have these milk drinks, the different things, pink drink, I call it. But no matter what it is, we have that blessing that comes and soothes our thirst. So in the month of Ramadan, Allah rained down us all of the divine revelation. So we know that all of the revelations came down in this blessed month of Ramadan. For a believer, the month of Ramadan is like that rain during the summertime. Perhaps if we can think about it, that for 11 months, the believers are struggling and fighting the shaitan. They work hard to please Allah, and then a bonus from Allah comes when he blesses us with the pleasure of Ramadan. When it rains of Allah's mercy and forgiveness, not for 1, 2, or 3 days, but an entire month. And how does it rain of Allah's mercy? In that all the shayateen are locked up. And I think it's very interesting because this is the first Ramadan in my life, in my practice for 33 years, that I'm locked up because of COVID-19 before the shaitan. So I deem by Allah that that is a blessing, that is such a gift, that this time Allah even gave us in the month of Sha'aban social distancing so that we could begin to retreat. We could begin to withdraw from the dunya, from the world, and we could begin to use that time to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Through this metaphor, Allah is inviting the believers to prepare the land, their hearts and soul for this rain. And rain in the spiritual world is often substituted for guidance. So think about it, all of the divine revelations were revealed to the lower heavens in the month of guidance. The month of Ramadan is analogous to the season of spring, Sha'aban. In this month, the believer prepares the garden by removing the weeds, seeding the soil, and watering the ground in hopes of beautiful flowers and tasty fruits later in the year, inshallah. Now, again, remember I said in the beginning of the class, please write down a goal that you want to achieve. You can write down more than one, but at least a goal that you really want to work on yourself. And I want you to have a plan as to how you're going to achieve that goal in the last 3 days of Sha'aban and in all of the months of Ramadan. Keeping in mind that the ultimate goal, the mission statement of Ramadan, is found in Surah Al-Baqarah, May Allah forgive me, I believe it's 185, but it's toward the latter part of the verse. And if you look back on your notes from last week, I gave you that verse. So intention, goal setting, creates the desire, the consciousness, and the determination, which in turn produces the required efforts for a task or goal, the intention of attaining piety, taqwa, awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, this requires a relationship with the Quran, because the Quran is what we refer to in the Sunnah when we don't know what to do. So our goal should always be around what has Allah told me to do in the Quran and the Sunnah that I'm not doing, and that's what I want to focus on. So perhaps the deeper meaning of this is that Ramadan cleanses and washes out in a gentle and generous way our sins. And it washes out the sins and brings in the purified rains that aid us, that fortify us, that nurture us into change, to positive change. Now, the words chosen for the month in which we fast have very deep, inner, and special beauty. We translate the Arabic word psalm or salma to fast. But in Arabic, it actually really means imsak and sakina. So let's talk about, first and foremost, the word imsak. The word imsak means to hold off or refrain. And remember, this is the month of abstinence. It is the month where we refrain from the world and we focus on our love and dedication and devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When a Muslim is fasting and is having the suhoor, the pre-dawn meal before the fasting commences, there comes a period when that person needs to hold off from food and water. This period is called imsak. And it is a few moments before the fajr, the morning prayer begins, perhaps to make your wudu. And as I said, the Hanafis, they actually do a 5 to 10 to 15 minute break completely before they actually, pray. And somebody has their mic on, so I'm going to just ask you to mute your mic if you would. By the way, I will be sending you today, and if we don't have your email address, please make sure that you communicate that to me soon. I will be sending you the dua that you pray on Thursday night with your intention to fast the next day. And I will be sending you the dua that you pray for suhoor. So every day you will pray these dua, and this will help you set that intention and get your consciousness aware of what you intend to do. So in Surah 2, verse 187, and eat and drink until the white thread becomes distinct to you from the black thread of the dawn. And this is the fard. Always the Quran is the fard. I don't want to argue about fiqh issues. If somebody's Hanafi and they break the fast, they start their fast a few minutes earlier than other people, alhamdulillah, that's just wonderful, alhamdulillah. So I want to speak a minute to sakina. And sometimes you'll see it spelled S-A-K-I-N-A or transliterated, and sometimes you'll see it with an H at the end. And may Allah forgive me if I remember correctly, it has a Tarma Buddha on it. And so I'll work on clarifying that pronunciation and what's best. Sakina is a spirit of tranquility, peace and reassurance. So I want you to make sure that you, within your own person, are striving for Sakina every single moment, every single day of your fast. So Sakina is a spirit of tranquility, peace, and reassurance. It is the spirit. It is that spirit that descended upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the believers as they made their unarmed pilgrimage to Mecca and were faced with an opposing military force of the Quraysh, with whom the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. So we want that kind of peace. We will face people in the world, perhaps, particularly if the bans are lifted, the social distancing bans are lifted. I would encourage you strongly to maintain a state of Sakina. And when you are experiencing Sakina, it's like experiencing a little piece of heaven on earth. As a matter of fact, Sakinat from the same root is what we will experience when we get to paradise. It'll be so wonderful that for 3 days, all we'll say is Salam Alaikum, peace be upon you. So I will remember, inshallah, to send you Bisomi Ghadin Nawaitu Min Shari Ramadan. I intend to keep the fast for tomorrow in the month of Ramadan, and this is from Abu Dawood. And Allahumma layka sumta wa ala razkika aftartu alayka tawakkutu. And that's, O Allah, for thee I fast, and with the food thou gives me, I break the fast and I rely on thee. So I will be sending these out, inshallah, to you sometime this week. I'll try, inshallah, if Allah wills, to get it out today. Always I find the sooner, the better. So I'm playing a little on the word sooner there. In Surah 48:4, He it is who sent down the Sakina into the hearts of the believers that they might add faith unto their faith, that they might increase their iman, that they might add iman to their iman. And so I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that all of us go into this month with an intention to build our faith, to increase our faith. Sakina is further mentioned in Surah 48, verse 26 as well. While the unbelievers got up in their hearts heat and cant, and the definition of heat and cant is hypocritical and sanctimonious talk, the heat and cant of ignorance and enthusiasm for high ideals, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down his Sakina. So he tamed their egos. He sent down tranquility, sakinatahu, to his messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and to the believers, and made them stick close to the command of self-restraint. Here they had traveled to do their pilgrimage and they were stopped. They could have been very angry, but they restrained themselves. And well were they entitled to it and worthy of it. And Allah has full knowledge of all things. In the month of Ramadan, we want to restrain ourselves and abstain from the noise of the world. We want to get quiet and move toward Allah, gain God consciousness. The loudness, the winds of noise, the winds of the radio and the TV and the stereo and the vinyls and the CDs and the social media and the YouTube and the fitness page and the Facebook and the Twitter and the Witter and all this stuff that I can't even know it all. We want to move away from that. The winds of those things, the disturbances that those things bring to our soul. Those things take away, in many cases, from God consciousness unless we're using it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Arabs say, Samatu rihu, the wind stopped blowing. So it stopped that violent moving. So if you've ever been in a desert sandstorm, those winds are violent and the sand literally burns your face as it blows on you. If you've ever been in the wind of a tornado, it can lift you and move you. So we stop those violent winds, the winds of argument. Psalm conveys the beautiful internal meaning that you stop making the movements that are disliked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those that are not virtuous, the movements that are violent, like when you get up in somebody's face or you mean mug somebody or you give somebody the finger. This is not devotion to Allah. This is not surrendering our limbs to Allah, but this is surrendering to our ego and our nafs and not purifying ourselves. The movements of the nafs inside of us, the movements of anger, disobedience, indulgence, sin, and vice. You will be tempted when you smell food at iftar to run to the food and forget about your fast. You are still fasting. It's the spiritual fast that you are fasting while you're eating. So sit with that food. Chew it 21 times. With every 21 chews, Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar. We know from the Quran that Miriam, one of the perfect women, fasted from speech. She vowed silence. Miriam indicated to them through a sign in verse 29 of Surah 19 that she is not speaking, and pointed to Isa to defend her from the cradle. And I didn't say I.S.L.A.M because he was a baby in the cradle and was not a prophet at that time. He became a prophet at 40 years of age. In this case, Miriam A.S.L.A.M, may Allah be pleased with her, may Allah bless her. Her vow to be silent or quiet was translated to mean, I am going to fast. And I will tell you that I can think of no greater benefit than for us to fast our mouths for a couple of days. Our husbands and wives and children might find some great relief as well. So I encourage you, make an intention that for one day in my life, I'm not going to say a word. I'm not going to answer the phone. I'm just going to reserve my speech for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I will praise Allah even silently, not out loud. I can practice self-restraint in this month. She did not say, by the way, I am going to fast. That is the word that we translate Psalm and imsak in English. She mentioned the word that would mean salmati. The meaning conveyed is holding one from speech, and therefore salma is withholding and restraining the self. So we see here in Surah chapter Miriam, chapter 19 and verse 26, I have vowed a fast unto the most beneficent Allah, the most loved. So I shall not speak to any human being this day. So there is a spiritual precedent that we would go a day without speech. And I encourage all of you to set your life up to practice this now and then. And I remind myself of that as well. That is Psalm. The essence of fasting is to engage in an act of restraint and control, a positive, noble, and virtuous act. It is an act of strength to withhold and control the nafs. This is the meaning of fasting in the spiritual realm. And we know that according to Surah 2, Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 183, we fast to develop and grow in taqwa. Taqwa par excellence. So we want to let our movements be occupied, accompanied with ruh and remembrance of Allah in word and in deed. So we want to forsake the winds of gossip, screaming, swearing, lying, exaggerating, bragging, and braying, emitting from mouths intended for the praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So taqwa is an internal state of being aware of Allah and being conscious of Allah and being reverent to Allah, not only to know it, but to realize it and manifest it and to materialize it on this earth plane. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Oh, you who have attained faith, fasting was prescribed upon you as it was prescribed upon people before you in order that you may gain taqwa." So that is why taqwa leads to being shielded, covered, and protected. So like our spouses are garments to us that shield and protect and cover us, taqwa protects and shields our inner souls. So taqwa min al-waqiyya, taqwa leads us to be shielded and protected against the attacks of the nafs and the attacks of the shaitan, of the nafs expressing itself through sin and rebelliousness against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that by doing the good things, we change internally. The change inside leads to change outside. Also, a positive change. When I use my extremities with an intention to please Allah, that change that I am producing outside of me produces change inside of me. So there is a mind, soul, and body connection here. In Surah 13, verse 11, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not change the state, the hal, the conditions of the people until they change what is in themselves. So I beseech you, I implore you, I lovingly beg you to decide what you're going to change in this month and to use and decide the conditions that you will employ and implement in order to make those changes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala builds us from the inside out, and a beating heart appears about 17 days into gestation. So fasting, abstaining leads to taqwa, because taqwa resides inside of us. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was asked, where is taqwa? He pointed to his heart, not his head. So again, we want to intentionally plan that taqwa is alive inside and manifested and materialized and realized outside our being by what we say and do and where we go and who we go with and what we do while we are there. And I will tell you that in some cultures you will be invited. They have soap operas for the month of Ramadan, and they will invite you, come and watch our soap opera. This is like something we do in a certain country, and I don't want to name countries. But I don't get sucked into that garbage. This is not a month to indulge. This is a month to abstain. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, we can start on the inside or the outside. If we do good deeds, it affects our heart internally. If we become conscious of Allah on the inside, it affects us in such a way that we do good deeds and give peace on the outside. So we need to desire change first and foremost. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that as we are together today, that He instills within us the strongest desire we have ever had to change in this month, the desire to add voluntary acts of worship to our worship, and the desire to change and get rid of the winds of discourse. And akhlaq is the plural of the word khulq, which means disposition. And disposition is that faculty, that malaqah of the soul, which is the source of all the activities we perform spontaneously without thinking about them. On the contrary, since we have the power to choose, we can overcome the dictates of our physical nature, the dictates of our nafs, through perfect practice and effort, and we can acquire the disposition of our choice. If I want to have the disposition of one of the asma wa sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by intentionally trying to develop that characteristic, I can improve myself in that way. We can control our lust. We can control our anger and other emotions and desires, and we can channel them to edify ourselves and propel ourselves along the path of perfection and wisdom, or we can propel ourselves to the path of destruction. The greater the amount of self-discipline, and it's very sad to me because you rarely hear people talk about self-discipline anymore. And we as Muslims should talk a lot about self-discipline, because you will never move from nafs amara to nafs lawama to nafs mutmainna without self-discipline. You will never reach a worship in the state of ihsan, in the state of spiritual perfection and excellence, without self-discipline. You will not fast successfully without self-discipline. So the greater the amount of self-discipline and effort on the part of an individual, the higher the level of spiritual perfection he or she will attain. And I want to remind you, and I know some people will say, well, yeah, that's a high ideal. No, it's attainable. And Allah has told us this. We stand between two extreme points, two polarities, the lowest of which is below the level of animals, the beast. The animal, the lion will go in and there'll be 100 deer. They'll all stand there with PTSD. But once the lion eats one of the deers, all of the rest, they know they're free, because animals will not kill the whole herd. But lower than the animal is the beast. And they just take everything they want. And the highest form, the highest of which surpasses even the highest station of the angels. We have the capacity to be more closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of free will than even the angels. And yes, I do encourage you to make goals to move in that direction. Set the bar high, set the standard high. And truly in setting the standard high, you will achieve great things in your soul. Abundance, spiritual abundance. The human movement between these two extremes is discussed in the science of akhlaq, ilm al-akhlaq, the knowledge of akhlaq, or the science of ethics. It is the goal of ethics to raise and guide people from the lowest animal state to that exalted position superior to that of the angels. So I have to have an aim or goal to change my akhlaq, my disposition, to change my inner characteristics. And often I hear people say, that's just the way I am, that's the way I've always been, and that's the way I'm going to be, and that is not the way of Islam. That is not the thoughts from Allah and His Messenger. That is the thoughts from your nafs and the thoughts from your shaitan, and those thoughts do not align themselves with the Quran and the Sunnah. So with that kind of awareness that change is for Allah, our owner, our master, actions that are virtuous and positive are more likely to be blessed and to produce internal change. So what I wanted to do, may Allah bless this teaching, May Allah accept it. If I said anything wrong today, I ask Allah to forgive me, for that is from my nafs and my ego. And if I said anything that was good and beneficial, I give all of the glory and all of the praise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So remember, on Thursday night, inshallah, we will pick up from here and we will talk about the mutaki and the characteristics, what Allah demonstrates in the Quran of the characteristics of the mutaki. So I just wanted to see if anybody had a question, anybody wanted to clarify how to go through Friday morning at dawn. Does anybody have any questions or comments? And I believe that you can type them if you don't want to speak up. And I'm not seeing any questions or hearing any questions. So please know that I love all of you for the sake of Allah. I miss you. I'm very grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He's blessed me with your brother and sisterhood and your friendships. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless you and your families with the very best of the last days of Sha'aban and with the very best of the beginning of Ramadan. As-salamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaykum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We miss you.
Wa alaykum as-salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Imam Psychist, we really appreciate it so much what you're doing for all of us.
Absolutely.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, jazakallah kulli khair.
Okay, thank you so much, and I ask you for your prayers. And I will remind you that in this great month, every deed that you do is exponentially rewarded. So if you want to give toward da'wah, I'll just close by remind you it's $ISLAM Inc. or Islamic Society of Leading American Muslims through Cash App and through Venmo. It's my personal name, Abdurrahman Sykes. I love you all for the sake of Allah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi. And just in closing, I'm sorry, please, I ask you to pray for Tinkerbell, our cat of 17 years. Is having trouble breathing and has not been eating. She didn't eat for actually 10 days. And we've been feeding her yogurt from our hands. And if we put the water underneath it, she'll drink. But we ask you to make dua that she will be able to exit this life in peace, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaykum as-salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah.
Wa alaikum salam.
Jazakallah.
Oh, mashallah.
Ramadan Mubarak to everyone, inshallah. May Allah make it easy on all of us, inshallah.
Thank you.
I just want to say I am super uber excited about Imam Sykes coming in every night during Ramadan and us being able to meet as a family real quickly and connect in the evening when we break fast. I'm just so really excited about that, and we all feel really blessed, huh, James? Alhamdulillah.
Thank you so much, Julie. Please, if anybody else wants to pipe in, I always love to hear your voices.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. This is Deborah. How are you?
Alhamdulillah.
We'll be praying for Tinkerbell. I love her so much. But I do have a question around zakat.
Okay.
As you know, 43 union plus another 20,000 cast members were furloughed this week, and we don't have any idea when we're going to come back to work. And when it comes to zakat, how I know there is 2.5% that we have to give for our surplus. But in this case, when we don't know when we're going to have a job again, what would we do?
Okay. Sister, there are many opinions. I do want to say this first and foremost. We do have zakat, and if anyone here needs money, it's family money. It's for the family. Does not belong to me. It's in an account. So if you cannot pay your rent, if you don't have food on the table, I beg you, I plead to let us know. I will, if I may, I will address that zakat question on Wednesday night. But what I will say is that 2.5%, I deem by law, this is the best thing to say. 2.5% of your surplus is not going to make that much difference. However, you don't pay zakat if you can't eat. If you cannot eat and pay your bills, then you can't pay zakat. So you would take that from the zakat for yourself. And so please do not make this difficult. Do not make a hardship for yourself. Allah wishes for us that we have ease. Allah does not wish for us difficulty. So yeah, I hope, did that answer your question, Deborah?
There
Yes,
is
brother, yes, Brother Jay, thank you so much.
You're
I
welcome.
know, alhamdulillah, I've been saving money for the year for that purpose, of course. So, inshallah, I will be able to give it as a zakat, etc. But I know a lot of people are not going to be able to do that.
Yeah. And by the way, you know, we have, by the mercy of Allah, been able to help some family members. And I'm just so thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I will say this to you. I know that many people in the world are suffering. All of the scholars say that zakat should be paid first to the local community, and then if there's not a necessity for it, then it can be sent outward. But that is the principle of Islam. I will not argue with any of you. There is a right upon the family, but according to all of the major scholars, the first place for zakat is at home. So I love you all. If there's another question, I'm certainly happy to take it. Okay. Salam alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Alaikum salam.
Alaikum
I hate to say
salam.
goodbye. I don't want to go. Bye, guys.
I understand. Bye-bye. Salam alaikum. I see Ridwana there, mashallah.
Sorry, tears of
جزاكم الله كل خير, everyone. I'm so happy
Bye-bye.
to see
Thank you.
everyone.
Salam alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh,
Can you help me
family.
get off here? I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm going to end the meeting for all of us now. Salam alaikum.